Our next speaker is Rob Gordon with Quantech Geoscience. Rob is a geophysicist, but what's really interesting about Rob is that he sat beside Wayne Gretzky in high school for 7 out of 8 classes in grade 11. He also obtained 99's autograph, and that was after Wayne signed his first big deal. And that autograph from Wayne let Rob craft the book called I, Wayne Gretzky, which is a collection of short stories. And if that's not enough, Rob is also a prolific collector of Indigenous art, which he has available for rent or purchase. So feel free to contact him after the presentation about that.
Hi everyone, thanks to the AME for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and hopefully there'll be some takeaways from the presentation. I'll be talking about emerging tech for exploration, deep MT to drive discovery. The image you see on the screen is from an MT survey collected in Australia, 60 kilometers deep. So the discussion for today just follows, I'll talk a little bit about what is MT, geophysical exploration for mineral systems, talking and touching on regional and local exploration uses for MT technology, and then how we can use it in and around mine sites. So what is MT? MT stands for magnetotellurics. It utilizes natural electromagnetic fields that are around us all the time. And these fields are generated by solar winds interacting with the magnetosphere and the ionosphere. These produce sort of high frequency energies, and then electrical thunderstorms, etc., are happening around the world all the time, and they're producing high frequency energy. And so these electromagnetic fields around us can be broken out into an electrical component, magnetic component. This slide just shows how the frequencies of these fields penetrate into the Earth. So the low frequency is going really deep into the Earth. The higher frequency energy is near the surface. And so the background on MT, it's actually an old technology. The guy first detected sort of these fields around us in like the 1850s. It wasn't until the 1950s that a guy had sort of come up with this formula. And the simple formula, the relationship of the electric field and the magnetic field over this frequency range simply provides resistivity and depth. For those of you who might not know what resistivity is, it's sort of a geophysical word that we throw out all the time, but everybody might not know what it is. It's the ability of the Earth to behave or impede the flow of electric current. So glass and quartz is highly resistive. Copper wire is a low resistor or a conductor. And so geology sort of fit through that whole spectrum of what the resistivity parameter can measure, and therefore if we're able to measure it quickly and deeply, it gives us some significant clues to what's in the subsurface. So how we present MT, if you go and collect one site, the drawing on the left is just resistivity changes in depth. If you collect a bunch of sites in a line, you can put them together and you get a resistivity section. And then thanks to modernization of computing and such, we're able to do 3D inversions now fairly effectively, and so we can collect data in a 3D sense and present it in a 3D sense. So simply for collecting it, a computer, and we have some magnetic coils that we bury to measure the magnetic field. We bury them to keep wind from disturbing them. It's important that they're still for quite a period of time. We put out electric fields to measure, electric wires to measure the electric fields. And so we'll set up a site, and it'll last, we'll leave it there overnight, typically 12 hours, to get a good large amount of data from low frequency to high frequency. There's the picture of the equipment. It's quite heavy. There's 2 or 3 people in a crew typically, and they'll put out maybe 6 to 10 sites a day is how they'll approach the programs. The great thing about MT is it's highly portable. It can go pretty well anywhere, but it's a lot of work, like to get these sites into remote locations. Sometimes we use helicopters, etc. So, resistivity as a tool, if you can measure it, it has a lot of applications in a lot of different environments. I'll show some today. It's being used for mapping brines, depth, as I mentioned before, near mine applications, gold environments, finding structure, deep structures that potentially controlling gold emplacement, and for porphyry exploration. We also use it in geothermal studies and some oil and gas applications. The images there, the top one is from the Destor-Porcupine Fault, and the bottom one is from a near mine survey. So talk just briefly on mineral system exploration. These images here are more near-surface cases of where geophysics has been pretty successful in terms of either delineating a deposit or showing something. And we all know that geophysics isn't a silver bullet. In some cases, it's kind of close to a silver bullet, but most cases it's not. Part of the exploration process is you can sort of get a fingerprint of what a deposit is up close, but why is that deposit there? Where did it come from? And these sorts of questions are usually tied to geological models, etc. So just going back to this slide and why we're interested in measuring these very deep geophysical images. Again, this is from Australia. It's 60 kilometers deep, and you see a large big purple or red conductive feature down at depth. The blue is resistive rock, and then there's these three fingers that come up from the abyss. The thinking is that these are, crustal breaks and sutures, and they've allowed fluid, or they act as fluid pathways. And so at the top of each of those fingers, you see some letters. OD in the middle is Olympic Dam, one of the largest mines in the world. And then the other two fingers hold two other significant mines in that district. And so since that time, there's been quite a bit of interest in sort of regional transects, going in places where there's cover and you want to know what's underneath. There's some great applications for that. Metal Earth out of Laurentian has been doing a few programs. This is from the Red Lake District. This is an image shown down to 40 kilometers with some significant conductive features. For geothermal exploration, I noticed this slide, and one of the things, they're typically looking in that 5-kilometer range, and so we're starting to get closer, showing you some examples that are a little bit more maybe relevant to your day job, closer to the surface. But in the structures and the features in these situations are very similar to what is really going on in a lot of mineral deposit exploration, the environments, the magmatic eruptive intrusions, and deep structures and sutures. And so the concept of utilizing MT and amongst exploration programs is to get the big picture of what might be happening underneath your local geology or your local IP survey or that sort of thing. This is a recent slide. The section is from a recent survey we were involved with up in the Yukon, where again it was more of a geothermal initiative, but the line actually was fairly close to the coffee deposit, and I asked the guys involved at the GSC and the YGS if we could move a few sites so that the line actually went over. Let's see what's under there. So the red circle on the map is zooming in on the coffee area, and then the arrows pointing to the deposit itself. You see by this section, you kind of look, wow, and at first thought it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? There's a huge resistive break that's happening there, and it's coming up to the surface. And so are there implications about what's over by those other big resistive things, or is this a tool that we can potentially zero in on looking for large deposits? So down to the local scale, we have an example here, a property in Ontario looking for palladium. This is just some examples of how you might use it on a exploration property. So the top, you see a couple of transects. So these are guys putting, stations, say 500 meters or 300 meters. In the middle, it's sort of a little bit of a random grid. The stations are maybe 200 meters. And then more of a stable or traditional grid over there. So there's several different ways and this is after they did the 3D inversion in their property. And so you can slice the model right down to down to 2 kilometers if you wanted. This is a section, the second red line down is the 450 meter level, and they had good success with palladium concentrations at the underside of these, some of what were determined to be basal units. More recently, just as a utility tool, if you will, the idea of I have some claims, they're going to expire, I need to spend $60,000, what can I do? Don't want to fly a mag survey for the 5th time because you've had these claims for 50 years, and so it's like, well, let's put out a few sites and see what we get. And the neat thing about this is, in this case, there's some kind of big structure there, and I think the fellow was hoping for some, little purple blobs at about 400 meters down. But he can add stations next year or 2 years from now to the line, and eventually compile up a very detailed resistivity section across his property. Porphyry exploration. These are some examples I picked of some projects we've been involved with. This is Resolution in the top left, Santa Cecilia in Chile, at Chemes, where there was a new discovery under one of those chargeability features central to the image. But what's neat about the porphyries are these roots that are highlighted going down to depth, like potentially, again, it's sort of that bigger picture. Where should we drill in amongst our chargeability anomalies? Well, it works out that depending on where you are in the system, these conductive roots play a significant role. Seabridge was kind enough to lend me this slide. They have reversed color scales, but the blue is the resistivity low in their exploration area. And here's a case where, there was some confidence in, is this the route to their system? And they had some success with some porphyry mineralization in a fairly deep hole. So mine site, near mine exploration, I'm just going to show a quick example of how it might be utilized. But right at the planning stage, after a discovery is made, is a great time to do geophysics because there's no culture and noise there. So arguably it's a good time to collect a data set that you can use into the future for exploration. But it's also a good tool to potentially mitigate risk. So looking for a deep shear, you don't want to put a tailings pond on a shear. You want to know that there's a clay layer, for instance, or maybe there's some water that could accidentally encroach the mine, like what happened at Cigar Lake, where water came in at 400 meters down. It's quite possible a deep resistivity survey would have picked up on a large conductive feature there. This is from the Yukon, just showing a grid pattern of MT sites north of the Minto mine. The red circle is just one site, and the middle drawing is showing that one site, what you get with one site, again, just resistivity and depth. Combining all those, inverting them, and then taking a slice through the model is the pink line, and that's the section on the right, showing very good correlation with the mine. Had there been more ore bodies or something like that at depth or nearby, we might have seen them, or there are some significant exploration targets throughout the model. Unfortunately for those guys, I think they've stopped working. Then other ways of collecting MT is what we refer to as distributed. So once the sites get really close together, it's a lot of equipment involved. It takes a lot of time. You can only put 6 or 8 out a day. So if you want to do 2 kilometers doing 100-meter stations, it's kind of a pain. So distributed technology was evolved where we could put out the electrics portion of the survey every 100 meters, the magnetics less frequency across the line, and leave the line out overnight and collect very detailed resistivity section. And the advantages of these systems is they're multi-parameter systems, so you can do an IP survey, a deep IP survey during the day, and then an MT survey at night. So that's pretty well it, and hopefully the takeaways are that you can see that there's a lot of different places to apply MT. It has some new driving initiatives for regional exploration and down to the local assessment level. Thanks.